Welcome to the Open Fire podcast. Open Fire is an honest and informed dialogue on fire safety issues. We direct discussions with some of the fire industry's most prominent and recognised leaders. Your presenters are myself, Dave Calvert, Operations Director at Frankham RMS, and this other guy called Tom Gilbert. Hello, Tom. How are you?
I mean, I like the way he's undermined me there, even though you did the intro wrong. But it's all good, Dave. How are you?
You didn't like the way I introduced you last week.
Well, you're introducing me differently every week, so I think there's now a theme that is the thing you're going to do.
I think it already is the theme, yeah.
Every time. I think we should mix it up and let me introduce you occasionally.
Okay.
How's your week been?
Busy. Went to the Consort Insurance Fire and Safety Seminar, which had some brilliant speakers, some of which are coming on as guests, so we don't want to spoil that. But yeah, really good, interesting seminar introduced by Ken Knight, who is also coming on, I think.
He's going to come and be a guest, yes.
It's really interesting the way the industry is going. So, and we'll be exploring some of that with our future guests.
Is there a big takeaway that you took from that? Just testing if you listened.
No, there was lots of takeaways, but I'm off the takeaways for a good 12 months.
This is true, yeah. So
because I've got 4 stone to lose.
What's interesting is, as we start to release episodes, your weight will be dramatically different at the end of the 4th episode being released compared to today, because it will be like 8 weeks' time. So
I'm
you'll
hoping
be a
so, yeah.
stone lighter. So people will see you visibly waste away overnight as they watch this episode, probably, and then tomorrow someone says to you, "Cool, you lost weight since yesterday."
Well, no, I'm assuming you're going to arrange it so the episodes go in the opposite order. So I'm gradually putting on weight through the year.
That would be a really good thing to do. So I'll make sure that happens. So we're joined today by 2 guests. Pan out, pan in, right? So we have Tim Barker, who's the National Sales Manager for Passive Fire Protection Products at Sika.
That's correct, yes.
And Malcolm Williams, who is Technical Manager at CLM Fireproofing.
Hello.
My favourite Malcolm ever, without doubt. So it's worth mentioning that Tim Barker approached us at the ASFP conference and basically wouldn't let us not let him on. So he's
muscled his way in here then, is what we're saying.
Yes, he's the only guest we've not had to ask so far. He just hangs around the studio. But thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. We're going to focus on passive fire protection industry, obviously, and some of the challenges that the industry is facing. Obviously, I think as having a manufacturer and obviously someone who's at the sharp end of technical delivery on projects in London should make for an interesting episode. And I'm sure at some point Dave will completely and utterly hijack it with a plug of backdraftmovie.com.
Is that the same cravat you had on last week? Is that a cravat in
It is. So
thing?
What's happened is, because I had to have lunch, I haven't changed my pocket square between episodes. So for 2 episodes only, you'll get this one.
Okay.
But you have changed.
I'm a completely different suit.
You have changed. It's a completely different suit because the trousers don't match the top. But we're not going to mention that.
No, because you're only going to film from up here.
This is very, very true. So, gents, Grenfell Tower was obviously a disaster that affected every industry pretty dramatically. Fire safety industry was affected massively. I think most of us probably morally and ethically slightly differently to the construction sector. Obviously they've been affected ever so slightly differently. Malcolm, what changes do you think have happened in the passive fire protection industry since Grenfell, both probably for the better and for the worse?
Certainly for the better, it's heightened awareness of the whole need for passive fire protection and fire safety. Massively. I don't think any other event could have had such an impact.
Yeah.
We're still a long way from being everything right, but it's pushing people in the right direction. We've obviously had the legislation changes with the Building Safety Act and the fire safety. Excuse me. And people are looking at it much more closely. It's being driven a lot top down for better standards and better quality of what gets put in, and making sure that what does get put in particularly from our field with fire stopping, say that it is a tested solution that's certified, correctly installed with a certified installer. I've just come from jobs this morning which were only done in 2017, and it's appalling. And they've stripped it out from what was done in 2017 to do it again, and it's hard to believe that was only 7 years ago that was put in. So it really all needs to come out, what was done then, and start right back to basics. So you can see there's been a sea change in what's done and what's acceptable. And I think one of the things we're seeing a lot less of is this term I used to drive me nuts is, well, can we get away with this?
Yeah.
It's not a case of getting away with it. It's got to be right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I absolutely detest that phrase. It still comes up occasionally, but, you know, we're getting a lot better. And I think as an industry, it's getting a lot better. But it's a long way still to go. But definitely seen improvement.
That's a phrase of our podcast, isn't it? Can we get away with this?
Can we get away with it? We say that
You've
a
been
lot.
getting away with it for years.
We have been getting away with it for years.
Yeah.
I think that the thing for me is that getting away with it point is something that's sat in industry for a very long time. And actually, the question, will we get away with it, was more about whether there'd been any scrutiny to notice, right? And actually what we found now is the scrutiny is there, and actually you're not going to get away with it anymore in any facet of fire safety delivery. And, you know, there's a lot of organisations, tier ones in particular, particularly those that work in the residential markets, who are now retrospectively looking at all the stuff they thought they could get away with, for want of your phrase, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and they know they need to put it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And at significant cost. Real significant.
And it's that change of culture of what's the bare minimum we can do, as opposed to now it's what do we need to do to make sure this is right.
Yes.
And I think that's the cultural change that I've certainly seen in the last 7 years come through.
Yeah. Are you seeing it? Are you seeing it top down? Tier ones obviously will always, in my view, will always seek to lead the way. Tier ones are getting a lot better at that, and I think they are leading it. Are we seeing it at tier 2, tier 3? Yeah, are we still seeing it?
Yeah, I think there are some. There's going to be good and bad at all levels,
Yeah,
aren't
of
there? And there are leaders at all those levels that are seeing it. We need to take a step up to the plate and do this right. And even, you know, shouldn't say even, but house builders as well, I've seen it in the last few years, are realising that actually what they did, that was not right. And as you say, they know they've got to put it right. Let's do it once. And we were having a just conversation about this the other day with somebody else. The cost for doing it in the first place might be, say, for example, 50 grand.
Yeah.
The cost for putting it right could be in the millions.
Yes.
Down the line. So why wouldn't you do it right first time?
Absolutely. So we were talking about this the other day, Dave, not you and I, but we were talking about this separately. And there was a job that broadly the same numbers, and it was a £30,000 job that we as an organisation have missed out on 10 years ago or something like that. And that job cost £5 million to fix. Yeah. And we were I think our fee was around 30 grand and they let it about £22,000, we believe. And we were called back to do the remediation on that job. And it was like £100,000 worth of remedials. But by the time they factored in taking all the residents out and dealing with all the stuff, it was literally £5 million fee to save 13 grand on a passive fire protection contract.
It's something in the industry that's getting stamped out, but it's the short-sightedness, and it's the same what goes on with government. Government's not interested in something beyond their 4 years of term.
No.
You know, they're not interested in taking the flak for ultimately another government to come in and take the credit for it later, you know, 8 years down the road or something like that. And unfortunately, it's the same with a lot of these housing providers, housing organisations or whatever at the time were certainly just doing what they needed to do to get by for them with no real thought on their buildings for the future. And unfortunately, that's now going through somewhat of a reversal. I think, you know, the attitudes have changed and are going to continue to change. But
yeah, they are changing, but
it runs deeper in our industry, I think.
Very much so. They are changing, but it's not, in my opinion, from a manufacturing point of view, they're not changing quick enough. Because you've hit the nail on the head there with the cost. That we can't afford 30 grand this year, so we won't do it. Okay, then it gets forgotten about next year because there's another issue turned up with whatever that is within the construction industry. And 2 or 3 years later, we'll go back to that. And as you said, Tom, it was £1 million. Well, that doesn't. How does that work?
Yeah.
It shouldn't work.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, yes, you might be saving 20 grand today. but someone might die tomorrow. Well, it's going to cost you more than 20 grand. And it's just, how do we push that without being, as a manufacturer, people say, well, you're greedy. Well, no, it's doing the right thing for the right price. As you as installers.
Yeah.
And it all sort of filters downhill, then filters back up, or it should. And it's doing the right thing at the right time for the right money for all of us.
Are you seeing difference in buying behaviour as a manufacturer since Grenfell Tower has happened?
Difference in what concept?
So are people buying more of certain things? Are people buying less of certain things? Is it an expanding market? Is it a crowded market? I mean, if I sort of think of the people that work in passive fire protection and manufacturing, I think of the FSIs of this world, the nullifiers, the qualifiers, the protectors of this world. There are a lot of organisations with different USPs.
Yeah. Is it crowded? No, from a manufacturing point of view. And you've mentioned some prolific names there, and I'm familiar with all. But Sika have always, I don't want to name drop, but Sika have always had that offering, but it's never something it's sort of trickled along in the UK, but it's always been a European thing.
I didn't know who Sika were until you started working for them. So that's a good reason they employed you, was just so I'd know who Sika were.
Allegedly, I am the face.
No, I knew Sika. They're a big organisation.
Yeah, huge.
But we know them for sealants in this country.
Yes, absolutely.
Only recently I found out about their fire protection side.
Exactly. There's never been that. There's been the offering, but there's never been anyone to take it.
Never been a push.
No. Hence the reason.
That's what you're here to do.
I'm here, I think. Yeah, that's why I was approached by Sika to take it from ground level to the dizzy heights of wherever I take it.
So Sika European based?
Global.
They're global.
Yes.
It's a Swiss organisation.
Swiss organisation, head office is in Switzerland.
That explains the DIN stuff on their testing.
Yes.
Thought they'd be close to Germany.
Yes.
So Dave, what's your favourite passive fire protection product in the world as a fire?
My favourite passive, bear in mind, I'm not in the passive fire protection industry. Yeah, I'd have to say I'm a big fan of pink foam, Tom, as you know.
Oh yeah.
I could not recommend more of it for my clients.
So when we started the podcast, I don't think anyone believed I'd go down this route, but I'm gonna, because I think I should. So
You do that.
pink foam gets a really bad rap, doesn't it, Malcolm?
Yeah, it does.
It does, but obviously you guys sell an awful lot of pink foam, don't you?
We do.
And there's obviously a reason for it, because it's not an awful product. And I've said this for years and years and years. In the right place, pink foam has its uses.
Yeah.
It has.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a misuse of a perfectly good product, actually. Is that fair?
I couldn't put that better myself.
But maybe if you start with saying where it should be used, and then you can go on to tell us where it gets misused.
And then we can all say where our favourite place we've seen it.
You'll have to ask Malcolm that, because as my peers may watch this at some point, and I'm not a fan of foam. However, it does have a place. So I tend to back away from pushing foam from a business point of view. But it's got a place. But I don't push it, because there's other options out there, I think. So it can be used if they read the small print and where it should be used in a solid wall, etc., etc.
So
I think it's a dangerous...
Essentially, it's got testing as a
It's a dangerous game for anybody to push or promote pink foam, because that you've got to have the competency and understanding to understand where it's got to be used. We wouldn't recommend it, because we wouldn't say, that's that. Use it to fill the right sort of holes, because most clients won't know what the right sort of holes are. So it's a wide berth for us.
So my counter argument to that, and I'm not endorsing pink foam, by the way, because we don't use it. But the reality is, if you're not competent enough to use pink foam, you're not competent enough to be doing surface penetration seals without pink foam. Because the right person stood by the hole should be competent enough to know whether pink foam or another solution is the right one.
Well, that sort of hits it on the head. You say we don't use it, and we don't.
No.
And most accredited and competent installers of fire protection won't use it either.
No.
And they shouldn't be using it. The people who should be using it is for things like movement joints or gap joints in blockwork, where they need a filler but they can't put mortar in it. But it needs to be fire rated, and that's what it's got its testing for. And the biggest problem with it is that most people see in big letters on the top of the can, fire-rated foam.
60 minutes.
Yeah.
And nobody 4 hours, a lot of them
Yeah,
quote.
exactly, yeah.
But nobody reads the little bit about what it's actually tested to, which is a linear gap seal, and that's all the testing it's got. They also don't realise it's still combustible, even the pink foam.
Oh, yes.
The big difference in pink foam and standard foam,
Not self-sustaining.
it's not self-sustaining. It should go out if you take the source away. But once it's alight and there's a fire there, it will keep going, and it will burn through. And that's how they got the 4 hours in a narrow gap, very deep, 400 mil or something.
To burn through.
It took 4 hours to burn right through, but it did in the end. If you put an intermittent mastic seal over the front of it, it won't burn through.
No.
But
the
then
mastics
because
do
the
its job.
mastic's fire resistant.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but that's where an awful lot of applications could be overcome, where it's useful to fill it and put a mastic seal over the front, like round door frames, which is where a lot of it gets used, and then you've got a fire-rated seal.
So if the issue, Malcolm, is that people don't read the instructions because they're too small, which is essentially
Too small or just don't bother.
how do we stamp that out so that
Education,
people
I think,
stop
is-
using pink foam where they shouldn't?
As we've touched on there, the people who know wouldn't use it. It's the people who think they can do a bit of fire protection, or they're doing a bit of building
Well, there's
work.
a lot of them because there's a lot of pink foam
There's
around our
a lot,
buildings.
and I've seen
around
it in
all over
care
the place.
homes.
So
Every opening through the care home
it's
is
almost
filled up with pink foam.
epidemic proportions. Or
Yeah.
It certainly was a few years ago. It's getting stamped out now.
It's getting better. But it wasn't that long ago. I went on I won't say where it was because some people identify it, but shall we say a 19-storey block of flats in Hampshire, built by one of the best-known developers in the country, not all that long ago, and there was nothing but pink foam in that building. Now, how they got that through, I have no idea. And it goes back to what we were saying before. We were working then with a contractor that was putting it right as a legacy project, and I hate to think what the bill for that ran up to, but it would have been 10 times what the original install got charged at, because all they did was just squirted pink foam everywhere.
Yeah.
And anybody who knows, most building control people, or even fire risk assessors, I keep using even, I shouldn't, fire risk assessors would probably know that most situations there shouldn't be pink foam there. And as like Tim, when I used to work for a manufacturer, we would frequently get calls from building inspectors, from local authorities. I have quite good connections with the Institute of Clerk of Works. And one of their common ones would be, if we did a CPD, which you were going to touch on, but if we did a CPD, questions at the end, when can we allow them to use pink foam? When should they be using pink foam and when shouldn't they? Because look at these pictures that we've got from a building. And its service is going through pink foam.
And how would you go through the various
And if this
circumstances where you
service is
could?
going through it, it should not have pink foam.
Yeah.
No.
If it's a linear joint, then yes, maybe if it complies with the test evidence.
Would you be expecting it to be labelled in a similar way to your other fire stopping or?
Yeah, any
Certificate,
penetration should be.
So
labelled
in
and
theory, there
identified.
should be no issue where there is pink foam. You would expect it to be certified in the same way, identical way, identifying what the pink foam is, who did it, why it was, and that in turn should feed back to the manufacturer's directions of where it should be used.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the problems is often you go into these older buildings that have had a fire risk assessment or something's happened and reason to actually open them up and look, and you see holes stuffed with a bit of fire bat and it's held in place with pink foam, and then it's been bashed about with and put some more cables through, so they put a bit more pink foam in it. And there's no labelling and nobody knows who did it. And that's the legacy we've got, is that there were and are people, not so much now, but there were people just doing what they thought was right.
It still
And it
are
wasn't.
as well, aren't they? Well, you mentioned the legacy work 20, 30 years ago, but it's 5 or 6 years ago that's still happening. All right, less so,
Yeah.
but it's still going on. And you touched on then, who signs it off? Who is signing this off? It's all very well having all the legislation out there, but if there's someone out there that,
Yeah.
and I'm not suggesting people do, fraudulently sign something off, or there's something going on somewhere behind the scenes, that's very dangerous practice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So in my mind, there's only two reasons someone would sign something off that's obviously rubbish to us. Right. One is that they're ethically not very sound, right? And the other one is they're not competent. And there is, in my mind, there is nothing else. There are no other reasons you're signing off. You either don't know what you're signing off, or you don't care what you're signing off. And I think what we're seeing now is I think that the scrutiny that you see on sites in particular, there has been a dramatic uptick in the quality and the competency of the people that are there to sign it off. And and sometimes the smallest degree of variation to an installation could become the world's biggest problem because they don't quite know, because they're not quite competent enough to know the limitations of what they're saying to us. And we find ourselves fighting a little bit harder sometimes to demonstrate competency and compliance on sites. But fundamentally, that is what the Building Safety Act, that is what the Grenfell Tower inquiry has unrooted, right? Is that there's an issue around competency, and in our industry in particular, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, we've got a big competency problem, and potentially is an ethics problem. And we've just had a podcast go out, which will probably be, I don't know, next week or week after, something like that, at the point we do it, where we're talking to someone about, I would say the food hygiene standards equivalent of fire ethics, and those sorts of things are becoming more prevalent. How do you demonstrate your ethics are good? We'd never had to do that. That's a new thing in industry, isn't it?
I think anything that pushes progress and standards and competency, what we don't want to do is become diluted by it and be focused purely on proving to someone that we can and forgetting why we're actually doing it and getting on doing it. We know what needs to be done. We know how it should be constructed. We know how it should be fire stopped. And then that comes back to what you've just said. There needs to be a competent person or business to go in there and install the fire protection. How far do you go to prove you're competent with that? How far should you go? But then if you've proved your competency as a fire stopper, you still need someone else to come in and sign that work off or prove. How competent are they?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a sticky situation, but it's certainly getting better and has done over the years. But as Malcolm said right at the start, there's such a long way to go, I think, from an installer and from a manufacturer's point of view.
As a product manufacturer, Tim, what's the biggest challenges that you've faced since Grenfell, do you think? How's the landscape changed for you?
How has it changed? Oh, this is what I'm going
Or has
to
it
either talk
changed?
myself out of a job or a career. I don't know. In my mind, it's changed, but ever so slightly. I don't think it's changed as much as it should have, or it could have. We're still coming up with the same problems. We're still coming up with issues at phase one, if you like, the construction of. And I think it's been mentioned, and I do listen to these podcasts, believe it or not, hence the reason I beg to be here. But I think we, or you guys as installers, are brought in to wave a magic wand over something that hasn't been constructed correctly. We know what the regulations are, we know it should be constructed, we know about the spacings, and then we get there, and that's not, well, I say we, collectively, that isn't what we've got.
Yeah.
So you, as an installer, then come to us as a manufacturer and go, can you help? We ain't got that. That needs to be a tested detail. Or we haven't got a tested detail because it's built incorrectly. Well, you need to come up with something. Why have we got to come up with something? Why don't you go back to whoever and say they need to change that and build it correctly or install it correctly?
And unfortunately, that's been the case in the past. And the fire stoppers has been relied on as the magician that get them out of the doodah.
Oh, totally.
And there wasn't always a solution, so it was best endeavours.
Yeah.
Something else.
It's a bread knife. It's not a magic wand.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. That, yeah. But I think that is getting better, and we've talked about it. That a large part of my role now is getting involved in those early engagement meetings where nothing's even built. It's in a computer model, and it's a lot easier to change. It's not always easy, but it's a lot easier to change it in a computer model than it is out on site.
Definitely.
But it still happens that, we've had jobs now where I've been involved in for over a year that I've been with CLM. So some of the ones I got involved in early on, and we went through all that process and all the modelling was done and we tweaked and you can do this and you can't do that. And if you do that, then we can do a detail. And then I get our guys at site level coming back and saying, did you approve this? Because this is what they've built. And it doesn't follow with the model.
No, it won't. No.
Because for some reason they had to move that because it didn't fit somewhere else. well, nobody's actually referred it back or cross-checked, is that going to be okay? And then you say, so we still get the scenario, well, we've now got two services that are too close together to get a compliant detail.
Yeah.
Well,
And
you
then
told
that
us we
filters
could be
down
that
to us.
close. Well, hang on, no, that isn't what we said. You haven't done what we said and what you agreed you were going to do. But, you know, these things happen on site, and yes, you've got to find ways over it. And, it comes back through us to the manufacturer. Can you find us a detail for this? And it, as you say, it used to be in the past.
Yeah.
Can you draw us a detail for that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which was
stick a bit of
your
bat and seal
classic
around it and it's done.
Desktop study or manufacturer's EJ. More and more, those are not being accepted.
Well, the gap we've got to bridge now is we've got to the point where the industry used to be Reba Stage 5, ring a guy or girl in a red van, they'll turn up with some batter mastic and a bread knife. They'd be presented with a hole on a construction site and they'd say, fill that hole, and they'd crack on. And it wouldn't be a tested detail, probably wouldn't be that great, wouldn't be buttered properly, it would just be pants, but it'd get
look
done.
Nice.
And it looked beautiful because we put a nice skim coat on the front, amazing. We now got to the point where we've got third-party certificated contractors who've turned up, maybe got a little bit of engagement at Reba Stage 4 during detailed design. We know roughly what we're doing, we've turned up on site, and then we're in a better shape. We've then spent time and effort to say, right, start talking to us at Reba Stage 3, allow us to work with you through Reba Stage 4, and we'll have every detail. Now we're at the point now where every single builder's work opening in the entire building will be mapped. There'll be a tested detail for it. There'll be a drawing for it, and we will know that before they've even put a footing in the ground. We'll know that. The problem we now have, so we've done all that design, the problem we now have is the mechanical and electrical contractor turn up. They aim for the builder's work hole, but they don't put the pipe where they're meant to put it within the builder's work hole. So the next step is to get the pipes and wires people just to put them in the right place inside the builder's work opening. And once we've done that, that's the full circle. Then we can turn up and all the test details we've designed actually fit. And what we have to do instead is ring you at Reba Stage 5 and say to you, can you do me a manufacturer's detail, please, on this? Because there is no tested detail for this. You need to sort me out.
We'll go back to what you just said. It's so simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why do we get it so wrong?
Well, because the big problem I think we have, and this is fire safety generally, actually, I believe, the problem we have is we are not the most expensive package on a site. When you think about the cost of the structure, the facade, the mechanical and electrical, those are the big boys on site and girls nowadays, right? Big boys and big girls on site.
Yep.
They're the big packages. That's where the money is. And passive fire protection might be 1% of your build cost, something like that. And if I say it's wrong on a site, it might cost them £1 million to move services. It's much cheaper to make me go and get a £30,000 fire test done to get you a new detail. Much cheaper.
I see that. And
What they haven't usually got is the time to do all that.
Well, no, because you're 3 days away from PC when they realise,
Yeah,
right? So you've
exactly.
got, So with the best will in the world, get the pipes and wires people to put it through in the right place, engage your fire stopping contractor at Reba Stage 3, and then you're in a much better shape.
And even that, I mean, some of the things that have come up over my last sort of year or so of doing this with mainly tier ones, but these sort of early stage design meetings, and then you get nearer the project where things are happening, and you suddenly find out things that we've been all through the M&E design, and then you go, well, what's that conduit doing in there?
Yeah, where'd that come from?
Oh, well, we don't model conduit, so why are you sticking it in service holes with other services?
Yeah,
But it was never on any plans, or loose bundles of cables
yeah,
that had just appeared. That, hang on a minute, the drawings you showed me a year ago, or the model we were looking at, they weren't on that. Oh, well, that's the security cabling. So, or, there's always some other reason for it.
Yeah.
But the main M&E guys aren't doing those bits.
no,
So they don't appear in the model. And the classic one is you get it all laid out and you get 2 services and everything's beautifully spaced. And then some Herbert, for want of a better phrase, oh, there's a nice space, I'll bung my cables right in the middle there. Or that's a gap, I'll stick a conduit in there. And it messes
or
all the
worse, I'll put it in
spacing
right
off.
on the edge of the detail.
Yeah. So it's all about being joined up, and yet there's still elements that are not in that initial loop of coordinating it all together. And until the main contractors can get all that together as well and realise that actually that's having an impact too,
Yeah.
you can get all this design right, the M&E, whether it be the pipe fitters, the electricians, get all that fitted, and right, and then somebody else comes along and messes it up,
Yeah.
who wasn't in that original discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is part of, there are so many people involved on getting all these services in, and of course space is always at a premium. So for us to get it right, we have to know everything that's there, not just most of it.
Yeah, and that's the engagement with the design team, right? Because I mean, like, it wasn't that long ago that non-structural columns wouldn't be in for the roof, so you'd have pipe work coming in, and they have to go around the column that wasn't in the BIM model, and then that corner might go through a wall, and then we're having to do a fire stopping detail through a corner of a pipe, which there's no tested details for, just because
never will be.
Yeah, no, of course it won't.
No, it's just, again, you touched on it, Malcolm, where you said it, education. We've got to keep, we as manufacturers, you as installers, have got to just keep banging that drum about improving standards. We've got to keep doing it. We can't, because you asked the question earlier, what's changed? And my answer was not a lot. Things have changed, but let's just keep banging
From
that
the
drum.
from the product manufacturer's point of view.
From a manufacturer, yeah.
What about from your view, Malcolm? Like, with all due respect, I think you've probably been in the industry quite a few years. How has the compartmentation industry changed since when you started?
Crikey.
First got involved to where it is now, and how far away are we from the utopian compartmentation landscape that we desire?
Yeah, you're right. You hit the nail on the head there. I actually started in this industry in 1984, which scarily is now 40 years ago.
That is before Backdraft came out.
After
the Tower and Inferno.
Absolutely.
It was after the Tower and Inferno, yes. That was 78. I remember that.
Blimey, I was still at school.
I was still at school then.
Knocking on the
Sorry,
back
Malcolm.
Eight-
Sorry, Malcolm. I've derailed it, haven't I?
Where's I going? So, yeah. And I was working for a company then that we did structural fire protection. And mostly it was cementitious spray, which we still see around. Intumescent was in its infancy, which is now something like 80% of the steel market. And then it was probably about 5, maybe 10%. And it was something like 30-40% was boarding, which was like the premium standard. You boarded it if you wanted it really nice. If it was going to be hidden, you just cementitious sprayed it. And for the first few years I was involved in it, and that was both in the UK and the Middle East, I didn't even come across fire stopping. And then I got involved back in the UK market late 80s, and I was with a fire protection company, and then actually was Clive and I first crossed paths then, back in the late 80s. And I actually had my own contracting business for a few years, and I got asked to do fire stopping then, and I had to actually look up what it was. And it really was in its infancy, and a lot of the products, there was fire collars around, mainly fitted by the M&E guys, but there certainly weren't tested details. It was, if you use this product, and I did, I can remember doing a load of duct work with Vickyclad fixed to the wall around these duct openings and with a mineral back. And it really was basic.
So that, is that 80s, 90s you're talking
Yeah, 80s, early 90s.
So here we are, nearly 30 years later. And so there has been some significant advancement, it's fair to say.
With the development of the product, certainly the range. I mean, intumescent products were fairly innovative then, and I say the only really ones were probably collars, weren't they, in those days?
Yeah.
Where we've now got continuous wraps, the graphite mastics, so a lot more ease of application and variation on what services we can protect with those. So from that side of it, it has evolved. It's quite a slow evolution over that sort of 30, 40 years. But what's really changed, I think, is over the last probably 5 to 10 years, is the amount of testing the manufacturers have been doing to push the boundaries of what their products can do, how closely services can be spaced, because we always used to ask for 100 mil spacing between services so you could get the intumescent in and have some fire back. But with the constriction of spaces, that was always under pressure. So some of the manufacturers now will allow for the intumescent to be touching the edge of the opening, for example. Always had to be 50 or 100 mil away. We always still, for practical points, certainly at early design stage, say keep that spacing because you might need it, and it's got to be practical to install. But actually, if you get the odd instance where it's tight, we can push it to the edge of the envelope. But you wouldn't want to be doing it all the time because you'd never get anything in there.
So how long till we reach that nirvana of being able to sleep peacefully in our beds without worrying about the slow percolation of smoke through holes in walls? We've come that far in 30 years. Are we looking at another 30 years before the industry's
We could be doing it now. The point is that not everybody is. But it could be, because the test is there, the products are there, the installers that are accredited are there, but there's still a lot of people who are using non-accredited installers.
Yeah.
Joe Bloggs from down the road with a mastic gun and a van, or as you said, a bread knife and a bucket. You know, there are still people out there who are prepared to use that because they're driving it to the lowest level and it's cost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That goes back to what we said at the start. It comes down to money.
Yeah.
You might save, and as you said, 1% of the build cost is fire stopping, so it's minuscule.
Yeah.
But if you can save,
But if they can
10
save,
grand,
if they can,
20
yeah,
grand.
10 grand on a 50 grand job,
Well, yeah.
a lot of contractors will.
And at the lowest possible common denominator is you've got probably a plumber doing his day job and he's using a pink phone
Yeah.
to fill a hole
Yeah.
Yeah.
because he's also the fire stopper.
Because as far as he knows, he's been told he's got a fire stop behind him if he puts new services in.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this job does it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which leads you into understanding your contract and the liability that you take on for your contract, for sure.
And remedial works is one of the most difficult because a lot of it is you've got existing services there, and like you say, a contractor goes in and puts, say, data cable in a block of flats, and he makes a load of holes. You're lucky if he does actually protect it with anything, but if he's going to protect it, it'd probably be foam.
Yes.
If you're really lucky, it might be mastic, but will it be to a tested detail?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then off they go until the next fire risk assessment comes along
yeah.
and picks up, so what have they used there? Where's the detail?
So within Sika, last question before we...
That's right. You can have one more, Tom.
Thanks.
And we're going to run out of time.
I look forward to this then.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. I mean, that's really built it up.
Tell
No.
Hope the answer's as good
No
as the
pressure.
question.
Do you want to change the question
Why
now?
did they choose that branding? No, I wasn't going to ask that at all. How much testing does an organisation like Sika undertake a year for specific fire stopping details or product development? Because obviously I know a lot of organisations are spending an awful lot of money on R&D and testing. Does Sika spend much in that space? Is that a big part?
Globally or UK?
Do both.
They spend a lot on both.
Okay.
The figures I couldn't tell you, but in terms of testing in the UK, it does vary because it'll be somewhere between 20 and 50 tests a year,
Okay.
and at 10 grand a pop,
Yeah.
ish, give or take, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's just in the UK, but globally, you'd be talking millions,
Oh, of course.
millions.
Yeah.
So it's not got any more expensive. It doesn't got any more expensive. We're just doing more of it, so it has
Yes.
cost us more.
So
Yeah,
do
the
you,
price-
and is that in the spirit of creating new products, or is it in the spirit of creating different applications for existing products? So more specific sorts of tested details for different applications rather than new products coming to market.
A bit of both, really.
Okay.
More specifics and more tested details for what we've got. And I think we're now looking at larger pipe sizes
Yeah.
because, and I've said for the last few years, buildings are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and higher and higher. You can't just rely on your 110 service pipe anymore. It's going to have to be almost double the size. So we need to start thinking of tomorrow's issues rather than trying to put a plaster on today's issues. So yes, we do tests with new products, which sometimes you'll never see because they don't work.
No.
With best endeavours, we've got to that
Yeah,
stage,
of course.
failed. You're never going to see that. And then we've got other products that we've tested within sort of other construction methods. And then within that, we then test those different applications around different products and services. So there's a fair mix in what we test.
One of the things, just quickly adding on to that from my previous background with manufacturers, is that a lot of the testing is where the service type manufacturers,
Yeah.
so pipe manufacturers, are constantly bringing out new products.
Yes. So,
So they need to be tested, because otherwise you've got no tested solution.
Yes.
The classic one was the plastic sleeved gas track pipe.
Yeah.
And that was out on the market for ages before anybody had a tested solution for it. We've seen it with the water pipes, the PEX pipes, the multi-layer thin plastic pipe that's replaced a lot of copper,
Yeah.
especially in domestic applications. So, you've got to be testing, even if you haven't got any new products, you've got to be testing your existing products
application of those
with the
products.
new applications
Yeah.
for the new products that are being used on site.
Yeah.
And those are I mean, there's not many weeks go by where you don't come across something and think, what's that? I haven't seen that
Yeah,
before.
never seen that before. Yeah. It's been another interesting episode, Dave.
I think it is for you compartmentation people.
Oh,
But
to
not so
be
Were you
fair,
glazing over?
I had to listen to you talk about safety cases for an hour, so I think it's about time you listen to me talk about mastic for an hour. It's only fair, I think.
It's only fair. Okay, we're going to have to bring the episode to a close. But I think before we go,
You're going to ask them to join your club, aren't you?
I'm assuming you already have joined the backdraftmovie.com
Appreciation
Fan club?
Society UK chapter.
No, but I'm sure it'll be done before 7 o'clock when I get home.
Excellent
Wonderful.
answer.
Got the
Excellent
right
answer,
answer,
Tim.
was it?
Yeah,
I should like to hear.
Okay.
Is there an initiation ceremony? I don't know.
No, there's no initiation.
Well, there is a
ceremony,
actually a qualification exam.
but We'll
Yeah.
get someone in marketing to sign you up, just in case you
Fair enough.
can't choose your own firefighter's name, which is a requirement of joining.
Well, we are trying to
understand.
we are trying to raise the standards within the organisation, as we've been talking about.
So there will
today.
be some competency requirements.
some competency requirements.
So you're going to test some of those competency questions.
So we're going
now.
to test you on your competency. If you pass this, Tim, then you may go ahead and apply online tonight for
But there's
your.
still an option for you to decline, so let's
Yeah.
see.
Indeed, yeah.
Let's see.
But we
See what
do
happens.
now have the first tranche of people who were just committed. Now we're starting to think about
Yeah,
competency,
like most organisations, we made it up, just got it out there, got some subscriptions in,
badges,
and now,
stickers.
now we're
But
actually
now
getting the competent
We're
people.
going to get to the competency. We're improving the quality for your organisation.
Okay, I'm going to give you a multiple choice question. You both get a chance to answer. Tim, I'm going to ask you a kick count. Tom,
Oh, I haven't got a pen.
I've got 5 Malcolm's ones
you,
here.
I don't know if you're going to need a calculator.
So I'm going to lean off set. No one will know. There we go. I've got
Okay,
a
so you've
pen.
both seen Backdraft.
Yes.
I genuinely expect you to have, being in our industry. I'd be very disappointed if you haven't. Malcolm, you're not nodding.
It was a long time ago.
Oh, the film was, yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, in what
Seen a lot of
year does the movie start? Is it 1971, 1981, 1991, or 2001?
In what year did the movie start?
The story
Well, the
within
set,
the
not
movie.
when it was released.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, not when it was released. When the story was set at the start of the movie.
Yeah.
Have I explained that right? Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
the first one.
I
I'm
would've-
I'm
I would've
looking.
said B.
I haven't got my
1970 you're
glasses
so-
on.
so
71? Was it?
Tim's saying 1971.
Yeah.
I would have said 81.
Okay, so 1 point for Tim.
And 1 point for me, by the way,
It
because
is-
I got 1971.
1971. You're in the first. You're
Oh, I've already answered
Is
it.
there, is there like a bit of backstory? At
It's a
the beginning?
10-year, it flash,
yeah,
a 10-year
it
flashback
starts
to the
off
brothers.
with how Paul
when they were kids.
McCaffrey's dad died
Yeah.
Yeah.
in a fire, and then it's a story of his two sons.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that bit. Yeah.
Starts in 1971, jumps forward 20 years, and it also says here in my notes, Backdraft is a thrilling film that explores the dangerous world of firefighting. Question
Sorry, were you writing the blurb for the book?
What was the name of the magazine that Brian McCaffrey was pictured in on the cover of as a child? Was it Time magazine, Life magazine, Newsweek magazine, or Roy of the Rovers magazine?
This
So
is
the
your
first thing
guess.
again?
Did you genuinely watch it, you two? You both said you've seen this
I
movie.
did say it was a long time
seen it
ago. My
recently,
memory's
yeah.
not as good as it used
The
to be.
beauty of multiple choice is you just pick a letter.
Okay.
B.
At time, I would have said whichever one that was.
So Malcolm's saying Time, and Tim's saying Life magazine. Tim's right again. Yeah.
Gosh.
Did you know that one, Tom?
I wrote Life. I didn't, before you even said it, look, I wrote Life. I did know the answer to that.
Okay,
because
question
it's
three.
also the
You've seen
name of the in-house magazine at Frankham's.
It's indeed, yeah.
Other in-house magazines are available.
Okay.
Question 3, what was the name of the bartender in the movie? Was it Billy, Willy, Lily, or Obi-Wan Kenobi?
C. Lily.
You're saying Lily,
Yes.
Malcolm,
I'm saying Billy.
Billy. You're both wrong. It was, of course,
Lily.
Tom.
Obi-Wan
Obi-Wan
Kenobi.
Kenobi. It was Willie. Willie was the name of the bartender in the movie Backdraft. While the main focus of the film is on the firefighters themselves, Willie's character adds a touch of authenticity to the story by portraying the friendly bartender at the local hangout spot.
Wikipedia, amazing, isn't it?
What is this quotation you put in after
It was
this?
just like a professional flourish I put on the end of each question.
It's very exciting.
How many different characters did Kurt Russell play in the movie? Is it?
No, don't give them that. They've got to give you a number.
Okay.
2.
2 from Malcolm, 3 from Tim. It was 2.
Oh, I got one.
What?
So are they even? Draw?
No.
No, I've
it's
only got
2-1.
one so far.
Okay, we'll allow Malcolm a
An
bonus
opportunity to beat
point.
Manchester City.
Well,
to get
allow him a
past
bonus
winner.
point if you can remember which two characters it was.
Okay, that's a good one.
No, I couldn't.
You don't have to name the characters. Just
Well, the main one.
That's it.
yeah. So Bull McCaffrey and
You can give a relation of him.
His dad.
Father.
Bull McCaffrey's dad. We've set it up for a.
Malcolm got 2 then.
We've set
Hold
it
it
up
back.
for a
2-2.
Yeah.
tiebreaker.
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 So,
Thank
no,
you.
sudden death.
Kurt Russell
That's it,
played
more
2 different
exciting.
characters in the movie Backdraft. One of the characters portrayed was Stephen Bull McCaffrey, and in the back to 1971, where it goes back. What is it?
Flashback.
Flashback to 1971 was he played his father.
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
I didn't
do
write it
remember.
down. I should have written flashback down. It's why I write things down. Okay, last question, tiebreaker.
Dave's not very well.
What was the name of Stephen's son? Steve McCaffrey's son, was it Larry, Sean, Dolly, or Barbara?
His son.
His
Sean.
son.
Yes.
I'd have to go with Sean on that.
So Sean, Malcolm saying Sean, Tim saying
I said Sean as well.
they're both right. Both right.
The name of his son, Sean, Barbara, Lily, or June, was the 3 answers you gave us.
There was a
there.
giveaway.
It was Sean.
Of course it was. It's the only boy's name in that list.
Larry.
That's the name of the barman.
And you remember the
Okay, so I
So they-
think
they
that
all got
qualifies
3.
them both to be competent to join the
You can now officially
backdraftmovie.com.
join. You will get a sticker of Bull McCaffrey to stick to the back of your car.
Superb.
Excellent.
Look forward.
And with that, thank you very much for coming, gents.
No, thank
Yeah,
you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for inviting me.
No, thanks for forcing yourselves upon us.
I had my arm up my back, I seem to remember.
You did.
but-
You did. You didn't get the choice. That's the difference here. So I think it's important to note we're independent and neutral, and anybody that wants to get involved can message us on LinkedIn and follow our page or website. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to appear on the show in the future, comment on anything that we've said in the past, and drop us a message, and we'll bring you down here to discuss at any point you want. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Thanks
Thanks very
Dave.
much, guys.
See you next week.
Thank you.